So I know, it's the middle of summer right now and most people are focused on zinnias, dahlias, and all the heat-loving crops that are in full bloom. But hear me out. One of the most beautiful things about flower farming is that while we stay rooted in the present, harvesting what's blooming now, we also get to dream ahead. We get to plant seeds today, sometimes literally, that become joy months from now. And in a world that moves fast, well, that kind of slow intentional planting is a gift, a small act of hope. And lately I've needed that kind of hope more than ever. Because here at Two Sisters Flower Farm, we've been moving at a slower pace this season. You've probably heard me talk about this idea of chasing slow in past videos, but this year I've really leaned into it. I've been craving more intention, less hustle, more clarity about what we're building and why. And while most seasons I'd already have my full tulip pre-order submitted by early March, that didn't happen this year. Not because I forgot, but because I was giving myself permission to follow a different rhythm, to step away from the pressure of keeping up, to pause before saying yes to the same timelines just because they're familiar, to make decisions from a place of alignment, not anxiety. And if you're in a similar place right now, I want you to know this: you're not behind. There is still time for a beautiful spring. And whether you're here to discover a few new tulip varieties for your backyard garden, or you're planning out your crop list for next year's spring CSA, well, this video will walk you through the tulips I come back to again and again. Over the past few years, we've grown tens of thousands of tulips here at Two Sisters Flower Farm, trialing dozens upon dozens of different varieties along the way. And while there are plenty of pretty ones out there, the tulips I'm about to share with you here today are the standouts. They're the ones I'd happily grow again year after year, not just because they're beautiful, but because they've proven themselves to be reliable, versatile, and worth the space. Now, in this video, I'll also be sharing a few tips along the way, like how we balance beauty with profitability when choosing which varieties to grow, and how we're navigating the stress that comes with an increasingly unpredictable bulb market. I mean, if you haven't heard, several major tulip producers have faced devastating weather events in recent years, which has made some varieties harder to find and pre-orders in general less predictable. There's a lot to consider when planning your tulip lineup, and my hope is that this video not only introduces you to some truly standout varieties, but also helps you make confident, intentional decisions no matter what scale you're growing on. So if you're ready, let's get started. So let's start with why tulip variety matters. I used to choose tulip varieties based on what I loved most, the colors that caught my eye, the blooms that felt the most exciting. But over time I realized there's more strategy to it than that. Choosing the right mix of tulips isn't just about what looks pretty. It's about what fits your farm, your market, and your goals. The right varieties, they can help extend your harvest window. They can help meet customer demand and can help build more margin into your bottom line. And when spring finally rolls around, well, that kind of intention can make the entire season feel smoother and more sustainable. So with all of that in mind, let's get into the varieties. I've grouped them together by type to help you think strategically as you build your own well-rounded list. Okay, let's start by talking about double tulips, because these are hands down some of my favorites to grow. Now, if you're not familiar with them, double tulips have more petals than your standard tulip, which gives them this really full, ruffly look. They almost look like a cross between a tulip and a peony, and that's part of what makes them so special. Now, one thing to know is that not all double tulips are great for cut flower use. Some of them are super short, so you definitely want to look for varieties that are bred to be tall enough for arranging. But when you find the right ones, well, they're worth every bit of effort. Honestly, doubles make up the bulk of our tulip order every year. And especially if you're just getting started and trying to position your flowers as a premium product, well, these are a really solid choice because the blooms are bigger. I mean, they naturally look more valuable, and that helps when you're trying to charge more or explain why your bunch costs a little more than the ones at the grocery store. Now, we've worked hard to build a loyal audience that understands and appreciates the value of local flowers, and that kind of trust, it takes time. But when you're just starting out, doubles kind of help do some of that heavy lifting for you, because shoppers notice size, even if they don't know much about tulips. Now, that said, doubles are becoming more common as more growers catch on to their beauty. So if you're growing them, it really helps to pair them with thoughtful marketing and storytelling to help them stand out. So let me show you a few of our favorite double varieties that we grow year after year. Columbus. Now, I've been growing Columbus since our very first tulip season. at the time I chose it not just for its beautiful form, but because compared to other doubles, it was one of the more affordable options. And honestly, I thought I might get tired of it after all of these years, but much to my surprise, I haven't. Every season it still stops me in my tracks. The color is bold and cheerful. It's a vibrant pink petals with creamy yellow edges that fade to white as the bloom ages. It's eye-catching in the best way possible and consistently one of the most reliable doubles we grow. I personally feel that Columbus is a great variety to have in your lineup. It might be one of the more common doubles, which means you may not command premium prices for it, especially if you're selling wholesale to florists and designers, but our retail customers absolutely love it. And from a grower's perspective, its reliability and affordability make it a solid pick, especially if you're looking to round out your offerings with something bright and cheerful. Double Shake is one of those varieties that just feels a little extra. And I mean that in a good way. The blooms are fluffy and full with layers upon layers of petals that give it so much presence in a bouquet. And what really sets it apart, in my opinion, is its coloring. It's elegant and refined. It starts as a soft ivory with bold magenta pink edges, and as the bloom matures, it shifts into a brighter white with a raspberry watercolor effect along the petal tips. It's one of those varieties that's constantly evolving, and every stage is just stunning. Now, I've grown this one both indoors through tulip forcing and outdoors in traditional garden beds, and honestly, I think the coloring is more pronounced when it's grown outside and exposed to cooler natural temps. When I forced it indoors, the blooms leaned more toward a creamy ivory with less magenta. I'm not sure exactly why, if it's just a fluke or a consistent trait of the variety, but it's something to keep in mind if you're growing for color impact. Icon is a total showstopper. There's really no other way to put it. If you're someone who loves bold color and a bit of drama in the garden, well, this one's for you. It starts out as a tight reddish orange bud, but as it opens, the petals unfurl into this fiery mix of red, orange with hints of gold. There's sometimes even a fleck or two of raspberry mixed in, and the entire color combo just feels super dynamic. What's more, the stems are nice and tall, and the blooms have that full peony style shape that makes doubles so appealing. It's not subtle by any means, but in the best way possible. Icon brings serious energy to spring arrangements and always gets a reaction from our retail customers. Now, Orange Princess is another bold one on my list. It's vibrant, dramatic, and full of personality. The blooms are a brilliant mandarin orange with burnt red streaks running through the petals, and there's this lovely touch of green near the tips that adds even more depth. The slightly curled petals give it a layered, almost sculptural look that really stands out. Now, I'll be honest, this variety doesn't naturally grow super tall. But when we force it indoors, we're able to coax out longer stems that work beautifully for arrangements. If you're a grower looking to sell these blooms as cut flowers, well, that little bit of extra manipulation can really make a big difference. That said, Orange Princess can hold its own in the garden. I actually really enjoyed growing this variety in containers a few years back. Its shorter stature made it perfect for a pot display in a front porch or a patio. I mean, there's just something about having a pop of fiery orange at your doorstep that brings early spring to life. Now, if you'd like to try your hand at growing tulips in containers, I have an entire YouTube video that walks you through our process, and I'll link it for you in the description box below. Blue Diamond is one of those varieties that just feels a little nostalgic for me. It's one of the very first tulips I ever grew back in my early days, and every time it blooms, it brings me right back to that season of learning and discovery. It's a cooler toned purple that almost leans blue, hence the name. The blooms themselves are full and ruffly with that classic double form that feels a little old world, a little enchanted garden. Now, I will say this one comes up often on substitution lists when bulb suppliers run out of other varieties, so it's likely a more common double variety. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, I mean, common usually means reliable and well-loved, it might not feel quite as unique or special if you're hunting for something one of a kind. Still, Blue Diamond has earned a spot in our garden time and time again. It's dependable, it's beautiful, and it blends beautifully with everything from soft lavenders to pale pinks and creams. Verona Sunrise is one of those varieties that truly feels like spring in a flower form. The blooms start out in these rich coral and rose tones, and as they mature, they shift into softer shades of peach, cream, and buttery yellow. It's like watching a sunrise unfold, hence the name. And every stage is just beautiful in its own way. The petals, they're almost scallops, giving them a soft, feathery texture that adds movement and depth to any arrangement. That ruffled edge, it makes the whole flower feel a bit more whimsical, which I personally love. It's one of those tulips that seems to glow in the right light, and it blends effortlessly with both bold and pastel color palettes. If you're looking for a variety that brings warmth, elegance, and a little bit of magic to your spring lineup, well, this one's a winner. Now, as you've probably already gathered, Columbus and Verona Sunrise have a pretty similar feel. Both offer full, ruffly blooms and warm, cheerful tones that shift beautifully as they mature. I've grown both for years and they look gorgeous together in arrangements. And while they're definitely distinct varieties, you'll see in a side-by-side comparison just how closely they resemble one another at a glance. So here's a quick tip. Whether you're ordering for your backyard garden or your flower farm. You see, most bulk suppliers offer price breaks when you buy larger quantities of a single variety. So if you're trying to make the most of your budget, this is one of those situations where it might make more sense to choose just one and go deep. Both Columbus and Verona Sunrise are great picks, so no matter which one you go with, you really can't go wrong. But buying in bulk might just give you a little more bang for your buck. Next up, let's talk about World Bowl. Because if you're a fan of rich, moody tones, this one's a total standout. The color is what gets me every time. It's a deep, saturated purple that just leans slightly warm, which gives it a richness that really pops. The petals have this beautiful velvety texture, and in the right light, the whole bloom, it just glows. I especially love pairing World Bowl with soft pastels or creamy tones to add contrast and depth. And while it's similar in tone to something like Blue Diamond, which is another favorite of mine that we've mentioned earlier, World Bowl just feels a touch warmer in hue, so it brings something different to the table. If you're looking for a tulip that brings drama and elegance to your spring harvest, this one definitely earns its spot. Dream Touch. This one is a real beauty, especially if you love richer, more moody tones. The petals of this variety are a deep magenta plum color, and each one is outlined with a soft white edge, which gives the whole bloom a really nice sense of contrast and dimension. It's bold, it's saturated, and it definitely stands out, especially if you tend to grow a lot of lighter or pastel tones. This is another variety that reminds me a lot of Columbus, so I pulled together a side-by-side here so you can get a feel for the difference. Columbus, it leans pink and a bit brighter, while Dream Touch skews more purple and feels a little more richer in tone. I will say, if you've ever had trouble getting long enough stems from Columbus, Dream Touch might be a good option to try. In my experience, it tends to give just a bit more stem length, which can be advantageous, especially if you're growing your tulips for cut flowers. That said, Dream Touch has been harder, at least for me, to source the past few seasons. And when it does show up on supplier lists, it's usually priced a bit higher. So as with anything, it comes down to what's worth it for you. Both are great options, it just depends on what you're looking for. Next up is Finola, a softer, more romantic variety compared to some of the bolder doubles that we've talked about so far. Now, these blooms are a delicate ivory with pale rose edges, and they have that same roughly full petal look that we all love. But the coloring here is a bit more subtle, dreamy, and muted in a way that feels really elegant. If you've been eyeing Double Shake, you'll probably notice some similarities here. Now, I love being able to show you these side-by-side comparisons so you can really see how different varieties stack up against one another. As you can see, Finola and Double Shake are surprisingly similar, both soft, roughly doubles with a romantic feel. But Double Shake leans a little warmer in tone, while Finola is on the cooler side. Again, both are beautiful, but when it comes to growing, I do find that Finola tends to be a bit more consistent in its coloring, which is great if you're aiming for a uniform harvest. It's also usually a little bit more affordable, at least in my experience. Now, personally, I lean toward the warmer tones of Double Shake, but honestly, our customers are just as thrilled with Finola, especially since most folks aren't comparing varieties side by side the way we are here in this video. So moving on, let's talk about Fringe tulips, because I've really come to love these over the years. These tulips, they have that classic tulip shape that we all know and recognize, but with a little something extra. The edges of their petals are finely ruffled or serrated, giving them this soft, textured look that instantly makes them feel a bit more special and elevated. Fringe tulips, they make up the next biggest chunk of our tulip order after doubles, and I think they strike a great balance. They're unique, they add interest to arrangements, and they're usually a little bit more budget-friendly than some of the fancier doubles that we order. So if you're looking to grow something a little different without breaking the bank, Fringe tulips are a really solid option. Let me show you a few of the varieties that we keep coming back to year after year. First up is Crico. It's a crisp, clean white tulip with a fringe edge that gives it just the right amount of texture without feeling over the top. The bloom shape is classic, very recognizable, but the fringe adds a subtle twist that makes it feel a little bit more elevated and special. Now, I will be honest, white tulips never used to be something that I paid much attention to in the catalogs. I always thought they'd be too plain. But a couple years ago, I added a few white varieties to our order on a whim, and I've been hooked ever since. They're so timeless, and there's something about the simplicity that actually makes them stand out, especially when everything else is so colorful in the spring. Crico has become one of my favorites in that category. It pairs beautifully with pastels, but also looks really striking next to darker tones. If you've been sleeping on white tulips, this one is one I'd absolutely recommend trying. Next up is Lombata, a vibrant single fringe tulip that brings such a fun energy to the garden. This variety leans into those fiery peachy, orange, and rose tones, and the color alone is enough to turn heads. But what really sets it apart is the fringe. It's almost feathery, giving the bloom a spark-like quality that feels playful and bold all at once. The stems are nice and tall, which makes Lombata a great pick for cut flower use. And while I wouldn't call it subtle, it's also surprisingly versatile. I love how it brings a little sizzle to the garden, whether you're tucking it into arrangement or letting it shine on its own. If you're wanting a tulip that adds a pop of excitement, this is one I definitely consider adding to your lineup. So along the same vein as Lombata, Orange Passion is a beautiful fringe tulip variety that shares that same vibrant orange hue and playful energy. But the biggest difference between the two? Well, Orange Passion is a double fringe tulip, which means it has more petals packed into each bloom, giving it a lush, full appearance that feels a little more decadent. Here you can really get a sense of Orange Passion's color and flair, with the added volume of a double bloom. That extra texture and fullness makes it feel especially elevated in arrangements. If you already love Lombata or you're just looking for something bold with a little more bloom power, well, Orange Passion is definitely one to keep on your radar. Brisbane is a double fringe tulip with a striking blend of pink, peach, and soft yellow, topped off with those signature frilled edges. There's so much to love about this variety, especially if you're into unique texture and bold color. I will say, double fringe tulips like this one can look a little intense while still in bud. With all those layers of petals and fringe, the unopened blooms can feel a bit over the top at first, but give them time. As they mature and open, Brisbane transforms into something truly beautiful and impactful, perfect for adding a touch of drama to spring arrangements. Okay, let's take a quick break from all the vibrant oranges and look at something a little bit more refined. Siesta. This variety has such a soft, elegant vibe. The petals are a lovely lilac rose shade, but what really makes it feel unique is the crisp white fringe along the edges. It's that contrast, those two distinct colors working together, that gives this bloom so much character. It's subtle but still interesting, and I love how it brings just the right amount of texture without feeling over the top. If you're after something that's cool toned, graceful, and a little unexpected, Siesta is definitely one to consider. Renomi is one of those tulips that had me at first scroll. I saw a photo of it on Instagram a few years back and immediately added it to my must grow list. It's a beautiful blushy pink bloom with soft green streaks running through the petals, and as it opens you get this full fringe texture that's just so charming. I will say this variety usually comes with a higher price tag. Per bulb, it's more than I typically like to spend, especially when I'm trying to stick to a budget. But Renomi is one of those indulgent varieties that I just had to try for myself, and I'm so glad that I did. That said, if you're growing to sell, just be sure to balance it out with a few more affordable varieties to help maintain your margins. Mixing a couple of premium showstoppers like Renomi in with your tried and true budget-friendly staples is a great way to keep your lineup feeling special and sustainable. So before we jump into the next few tulips, I do want to give you a quick heads up, because this is one of those things that I didn't realize until I saw these tulips blooming side by side. The next three varieties, Louvre, Heartbeat, and Purple Crystal, are actually more similar than I expected. When I was placing my bulb order, I thought each one would bring something totally unique to the table. But once they bloomed, I realized they all fall into a very similar color palette. They're soft pinks and purples with fringe edges and that romantic, slightly whimsical feel. Now, don't get me wrong, they're all beautiful, but if you're trying to stay within budget or get the most value from your order, this might be one of those moments where less is more. Instead of spreading your investment across 3 very similar varieties, you could pick your favorite and buy in bulk. That way you not only save a little money per bulb, but you also end up with a stronger visual impact come bloom time. Now I will show you a side-by-side comparison of all 3 at the end so you can see how they stack up, but first let's take a closer look at each one individually so you can decide which is the best fit for your garden or flower farm. Louvre. Louvre is a soft, cheerful tulip with lovely lavender lilac tones that feel like a breath of spring air. The blooms have a gentle fringe edge and it's almost a watercolor-like blend of pinks and purples with a slightly deeper purple-blue base that adds just enough contrast to keep things interesting. It's feminine without being overly frilly and makes a great addition to pastel spring palettes. If you're looking for a tulip that brings a light, romantic touch to the garden or bouquet, Louvre is a solid contender. It's a kind of variety that feels right at home in both casual and more refined arrangements. Purple Crystal. Purple Crystal is a richly colored plum purple tulip with finely fringed edges that add just the right amount of texture. It's definitely the most saturated of the 3 that we're comparing here, and it brings a beautiful sense of depth and moodiness to the mix. Now, one thing to note, unlike many tulips that open wide as they age, Purple Crystal tends to hold its shape, staying a bit more closed even at peak bloom. That's not necessarily a drawback. Some folks actually prefer that neater, more compact look. This variety, it holds its form well in arrangement. It adds that dramatic touch without feeling too over the top. Heartbeat is such a sweet variety. The blooms start out as a soft coral pink with just a hint of warm apricot in the mix. And as they age, they gradually mellow into this beautiful, almost blush pink tone. It's one of those varieties that feels gentle and romantic from the very beginning, but becomes even softer and more elegant as it opens and matures. It doesn't shout for attention, but in the best way. If you're someone who loves tulips that feel refined and timeless, well, Heartbeat is a lovely one to have in the mix. Now that you've seen all 3, Louvre, Heartbeat, and Purple Crystal side by side, you can really get a sense of how similar they are. Each variety is unique in its own way, but unless you have a lot of spacing and are trying to grow all the tulips, I'm not really sure that you need all 3 in your lineup. They're all worth growing truly, but if I had to pick just one for our retail customers, I'd go with Louvre. That soft lilac lavender tone consistently sells well, and it tends to be the most universally loved of the 3. Up next, let's talk about Parrot Tulips. Truly one of the most artistic flowers that you can grow. With their feathered, irregular petals and color patterns that look almost painted, they're a little wild and a little unpredictable, and that's exactly what makes them so special. Personally, I adore them. If I were growing a garden just for myself, it would be filled with parrot-style varieties. But I've learned over the years that not everyone feels the same way. These tulips tend to spark strong opinions. Our longtime customers usually love their uniqueness, while some of the newer faces at our farm aren't quite sure what to make of them. They're not your traditional tulip, and in the vase they behave differently too. They're a little bit more whimsical, less structured. For some people, that's a drawback. For others, it's what makes them so magical. So when it comes to growing parrots, it's really about striking the right balance. I like to keep a few varieties in the mix each year, especially for our loyal customers who have come to expect something a little different from us. But I also like to keep in mind that for our newcomers, these blooms might just be a bit too far a departure from what they imagine when they think tulip. So Apricot Parrot is the one parrot-style tulip that I grow every single year without fail. It's just that good. The coloring is a stunning mix. It's shades of apricot, salmon, and coral swirled together across ruffled petals in a rich painted display. And then there's that subtle brushstroke of soft green that radiates from the center of each bloom, fading into the scalloped edges. It's layered, it's dynamic, and always a showstopper. Now, I will be the first to admit, not all parrot tulips are easy to grow. Some can be a little finicky. But this one, it's been reliably strong for us year after year, which is why it's always earns a spot in our lineup. Monarch Parrot is another favorite of mine, though I'll admit, I was hesitant at first. The buds, they start out as a sort of dull red color, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But once they opened, wow, they transform into vibrant orange blooms with bold yellow streaks that almost look like flames dancing across the petals. The colors are so rich and saturated, it's a bold, showy tulip that really makes a statement. That said, I don't always grow this one every year, mainly because my list tends to skew a little orange heavy already. But in seasons where I'm looking to expand or add some drama, Monarch Parrot always earns its spot. So rounding out the tulip types are the classic single tulips. Now, I know it can be tempting to skip over these in favor of the more exciting types that we've already covered. I used to feel that way too, but after growing tens of thousands of tulips over the years, I've developed a real appreciation for how wonderful these more traditional blooms truly are. Singles, they're a great way to round out your bulb order, especially if you're trying to stick to a budget. Since they're typically the least expensive tulip type, they allow us to balance out our bulb costs without sacrificing beauty or variety. They look great on their own, but they also mix effortlessly with just about anything. So if quantity is a priority, singles are one of the easiest and most economical ways to bulk up your bouquets. Plus, there are some wonderfully unique colors out there that put a fresh, non-traditional twist on an otherwise classic bloom. Just because they're called singles, it doesn't mean they have to be boring. So let me share a few of my favorites. These are the varieties that surprise me most and have earned a permanent spot on our grow list. Poose is one we grow almost every year, and for good reason. It's a single tulip, but its two-tone coloring gives it such a playful, unexpected twist. The bright pink petals pair with a creamy yellow base adds a surprising pop that always stands out in the field. It feels cheerful and fun and brings a particularly lighthearted energy to both the garden and the vase. It's proof that single tulips can still bring a lot of personality to the table. And then there's Supermodel. Supermodel brings a touch more elegance to the garden with its watermelon pink petals that fade into an ivory white base. It has a soft, graceful look that feels perfectly suited for early spring bouquets. While it shares a similar two-tone charm with Poose, I will say, if bud size matters to you, Poose tends to have slightly larger blooms in my experience. Still, Supermodel holds her own with a refined, polished vibe that adds a lovely contrast to the more playful varieties that we grow. Rousion is another reliable favorite that's earned a permanent spot on our grow list. It's easy to grow, blooms consistently on tall, sturdy stems, and pairs beautifully with just about anything. On its own, it's a standout, with bright, cheerful purple blooms that feel both bold and versatile. As the flowers mature, the petals gently reflex back, creating a subtle, ruffle effect that adds just the right amount of elegance and texture to garden beds and arrangements alike. Next up, Strong Gold. Now, Strong Gold was a new addition to our lineup last year, but I've grown its red counterpart, Strong Love, many times before. Since the two are closely related, I had no doubt that Strong Gold would perform just as well, and it did. Yellow always sells well for us at retail, which is part of why we've leaned more into Strong Gold. Now, in case you're wondering, we don't grow Strong Love as often. Not because it's not a great tulip, but simply because our customers don't tend to gravitate towards the reds. Strong Gold, on the other hand, it hits that sweet spot. It's richly saturated without being overly bright, and the blooms are large and sturdy. Like Strong Love, it stays neat as it ages. Its petals don't unfurl or drop as quickly, which gives the illusion of a longer vase life. It's clean, classic, and dependable, just how I like my singles. Okay, if there's one piece of advice that I can give you after sharing all these tulip varieties, it's this. Grow what you can, love what you grow. I think that's a real truth of tulips. Because here's the thing. I know it can feel overwhelming, especially when you're trying to balance beauty and profitability, or build your dream list only to realize that not every variety will be available. In recent years, unpredictable weather events have hit some of the largest tulip producers in Holland. And what that means for us, whether you're a backyard gardener or small-scale farmer, is that bulb availability has gotten more uncertain. It's now more common than ever to receive a pre-order full of substitutions come fall. And while it can feel frustrating at first, here's what I've learned over the years. Even the unexpected varieties, especially the ones I didn't choose, have ended up being some of the most beautiful and rewarding to grow. So yes, plan ahead. Choose the ones that speak to you. Be thoughtful with your budget and your goals, but also leave a little room for surprise, because tulips have a way of showing up exactly how and when you need them most. Now, if this video has helped you feel more confident as you plan your next tulip season, be sure to give it a like and let me know in the comments below what varieties you're most excited about growing. I'd love to hear about them. Also, if you enjoyed learning what makes our favorites list, then you're going to want to check out this video here on our favorite summer annuals, or this video here on our favorite dahlia varieties. I'll link both of those and more in the description box below. As always, I want to say thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye guys.